This is the Be One Change One podcast, where our mission is to help listeners define values, practice integrity, and inspire change.
Our vision is to mentor men and empower them to achieve more by taking responsibility for shaping their own lives.
He's CAS, an evolving man who has been shaped by adversity and continues to grow through his imperfections.
And he's Roscoe, an imperfect work in progress that tries to suck less every day.
Between us, we have over 40 years of Air Force fighter pilot experience with countless hours as trainers, instructors, and mentors.
Join us and learn to take responsibility for your own life as we dive into subjects from leadership to resilience to vulnerability.
Be the one who changes their course. Be decisive, driven, and purposeful. Set the example for others. Lead. We wish we'd had this show when we were younger men.
Be the one. No, not at all.
I'm kind of I'm kind of enjoying I'm enjoying the show a little bit.
I don't know why you would be.
I am.
It's a fucking disgrace. I mean, it's ridiculous.
That's an interesting take on it.
I think it's a disgrace. It's disgraceful what they're doing and what's going on, but that's just me.
Yeah. I'd be interested to go to lunch with you and get the behind the scenes on why you feel that way.
Well, I'll tell you,
because I know you're educated on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm not.
If we're just talking Elon, I mean, the fact that you have a guy who is unelected making decisions outside of the purview of really the Constitution or Congress, who is the people that own the purse strings, with access to tons of information that he and his compatriots may not even be cleared for, and making decisions around, who's going to stay and who's going to go. I mean, it's one thing to want to find waste and abuse. I think everybody could get on board with that, but there's a right way to do it, right? There has to be oversight, and that oversight typically comes from Congress. And I know that sucks because that's a slow process, but that's the way things were created for a reason. And it's so these kinds of things couldn't happen. And it's a complete conflict of interest too, Roscoe, because you got a guy who's got U.S.-based companies that get tons of money from the federal government, who's got access to all kinds of information, potentially against for some of his competitors, doing these kinds of things with no oversight. He's not an elected official, and it's been. I mean, trust me, dude. I can get on board with. Let's be honest. You and I saw fraud, waste, and abuse every year we were in the Air Force. It's in the government. But I think that there's a better way to go about this process that doesn't lead to the amount of chaos, and the blatant disregard for, how this process should work and the oversight that the accountability that goes along with it. The Wall Street Journal, this was a couple of weeks ago now, and I haven't looked at the Doge website, but I think the Wall Street Journal said that what they had found so far amounted to about 2.9 billion dollars in savings from what they found, because some of the things that they've claimed they found were mismarked, or they thought that they were going to save this money, but then they realized that money had already been spent. And it's probably north of that now. I don't know how much, but dude, you could 5x that by just not giving Tesla the government subsidies and tax credits that they get every year because they're an EV company. Because they get about $15 billion a year from the United States government. So you could already 5x what Elon and his boys have found just by not doing that for Tesla. But, and just like the whole car salesman thing, like I get that. It's so pay to play for me. That's what it is. You got a guy who gave Trump more money than anybody else for his campaign, got appointed to this position, which, the administration has walked back several times, because as they start to do these things and they realize the illegality in some of it, then they go, oh, well, he's not really in charge. It's this other lady who's a federal employee who's in charge. He's just an advisor, right? So they walk it back because they realize as the court cases come up that the shit that they're doing is fucking illegal. But he doesn't care, because what does Trump do? He gets away with illegal shit all the time. I mean, think about it, dude.
Oh wait, he's a politician?
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
I mean, he does, right? I mean,
just like everybody else in Washington D.C.
well, I don't
So
know that that's true. There's a lot of politicians that
I
have
know I
gone to
shouldn't
jail for
speak in
shit that they've
absolutes,
done.
but
But
I would argue that of 250 something representatives, 230 of them are probably corrupt.
yeah, I would totally agree with that. So
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm off my
No,
soapbox.
that's
My rant's
no,
over.
that's an interesting take, man. And I think that I think that your position is probably based on information that you're getting from whatever source you're getting it from, for sure. And it's, we talk about all the time on here. We talk about how, a lot of your core beliefs come from your experience and from your environment, and hopefully for some of us, it comes from doing some research, and maybe you're open-minded to changing some of that stuff. And I see it a little bit of a different way. I actually read this really long blog article by some rando one day that explained to me what I thought was a pretty good explanation of the how and why behind it. And it's a little bit abstract. And I think, for most people who are only kind of the headline readers, I think that they would be challenged to open their mind and look at it this way. But when Elon took over Twitter, he sort of did this same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was based on the Pareto principle. And this is something that I know you and I have talked about in the past. I know we've talked about it in your office over at Jack and Coke years ago. We talked about the 80-20, right? 80% of the work gets done by 20% of the people. So you know what? That 80%, fuck them, right? And I know in the building that I work at, I still am kind of quasi associated with the government. The building that I work in, there's probably 5 dudes in there that could leave tomorrow and nobody would miss them. So I don't completely disagree with that. The methodology, okay, sure. But this isn't the first time, nor will it be the last time that we've had a non-elected official come in and make decisions and change things. J. Edgar Hoover is a great example of that. Back in the day, he was appointed as the FBI director, and he stayed there for something like 40 or 50 years, right? And you can look back through history from the late 1950s all the way up to the time we put him in a hole in the ground, and how much that one individual shaped and defined the direction that our country went because of all of his dirt that he had on everybody. I mean, the guy was corrupt as fuck, man.
Yeah.
So I'm not getting too carried away about that whole statement that you said about, well, he's a non-elected official. Yeah, so what? This isn't the first time, and this won't be the last time.
Doesn't mean it make it right.
And then, well, I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing
what the fuck
that.
are we going to do when? Okay, so but Roscoe, so when do you finally do the right fucking thing? Like, at what point do we finally hold people accountable to do the right thing instead of just
when we
going,
burn it all down and start over, Cass?
And that's what you want to do? You want to burn it all down and start over? Let's fucking flame the Constitution. Let's flame our government. Let's flame all of our institutions. Let's burn it to the ground and start over. That's what you want to do?
I didn't say that's what I wanted to do.
That's
but
what you
asked,
just said.
No, you asked, how do we get it? How do we get it right?
No, I said, when are we going to hold people accountable to not just say that it's okay that he did it, so I'm going to do it now too?
All right. Well, don't miss the fact that one of the statements that you made earlier was that you should have Congress's oversight on it, and that's kind of like the cat licking its own ass, right?
But the Constitution.
That's part of and I don't think you can disagree with me on this. That's part of the reason that we're in the situation we're in now, is because that oversight has not been happening because of every bill that's been put forth in the last 50 years has. I mean, look at they call it the pork, right? There's fat on the outside.
That doesn't mean that oversight doesn't happen, though.
No, but is it just eye candy, though? Is it? I mean,
but I don't think it always
percentage of it is just ball wash?
I don't have statistics for you. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I'm not arguing with you that, and I wouldn't argue that there isn't ball wash in it. But I don't think the answer is let's burn it all down.
I don't know. You don't try not to put words in my mouth. I didn't say that's what I wanted to do. You asked what's the answer, and I said burn it all down. In a perfect world, the way that Roscoe would like to see it is, I would like to see term limits on some of our representatives. I would like to see some agency created, and I don't even know how to frame it, but some outside agency, maybe it's privatized, that is the oversight committee. Maybe privatized isn't the right answer, because then they just become capitalistic, money seeking, and they're. But here's the thing, man, is like everybody has a price, right? And until we crush the lobbyists and the people who are paying for this shit behind the scenes, nothing's ever going to change, man. Like, do you really think that we've been working on some of these diseases for 100 years and we don't have a cure for it?
Here's that, but see, that's the hypocrisy in all this, which which exists on both sides, right? Is, you're saying, well, we got to get the money out of it. We got to get the pay to play, right? But that's exactly what's fucking going on now. You think Elon Musk would be where he is right now if he hadn't given Trump $300 million or whatever it was for his campaign?
100%.
I mean, 100%. That's the issue right there.
Did not even bring that up as an argument. Did not even bring that up as a counter argument.
That, give all this money and then buy all this influence. And it happens on both sides. That's not a Trump thing or a Republican thing necessarily.
But you know what? On the other side of that coin, though, is the far left progressives who have been pushing the Green New Deal for a decade or more. They should be ecstatic that we're investing in EVs, right?
Oh yeah,
but they're not, because it's Elon. You know what I'm saying? So
that's not true. I think.
It's this cat and mouse thing.
It's funny because the whole Tesla's on the White House lawn car salesman thing was. I'm not sure Elon understands that, like, MAGA's probably not his core population to sell Teslas to. Like, most of those people probably aren't looking at EVs. They don't believe in global warming or issues with CO2 or things like that. They're they want their trucks or whatever, right? So, like, his core.
Hold up, I resemble that remark.
His core, yeah, right. Well, that's what I'm saying, right? I mean, his core group is typically progressive Democrats. It's usually people that are a little more moderate or left leaning. Mm-hmm. They're going to buy EVs as some kind of a conscious, altruistic, whatever way of that virtue signaling. But yeah,
maybe I think
it's just funny.
I do think it's interesting, though, that you kind of threw a blanket over the MAGA thing. And will you agree with this? Will you agree that over, let's say, the last 30 years, really since Bill Clinton, the Overton window has shifted pretty far to the left? So what we would call a conservative in maybe the Reagan years is more kind of like a mid, kind of a middle of the road kind of guy now. Whereas the left side has just gotten a little bit crazier as we've gone.
I think it's a little closer on both sides than you think, Roscoe. Like, I think what's happened is we hear from the loudest voices, the craziest voices on both sides, on the right and the left. And what we need is more moderates. We need more people that are
I don't disagree with that,
and want to find middle ground, because you've got your crazy left wing progressives, that want to shift everything to solar yesterday, and have all these unrealistic goals about how we're going to do things to protect the environment and stuff like that. And then you got your crazy Christian nationals on the right.
Oh,
who just want to fucking strip everything back to the 1700s, and take everybody's rights away. And as long as they're Christian, they're good. But so you've got nut jobs on both sides. And I think, unfortunately, with the way that social media in the news cycle works now, is those are the people that we hear the most.
That's who you hear about. Yeah. But okay, so just look at like
Marjorie Taylor Greene, dude. How does somebody that fucking stupid get elected to Congress?
Money.
And you could say the same thing about people on the left too. Like, there are crazy fucking people on the left, and you just sit there and you go, how the fuck do people in wherever go, oh yeah, that person makes sense? Like, it blows my mind, dude.
So I'm a NASCAR fan, dude. I like watching NASCAR. And there are, I don't know, a couple, 2 or 3 drivers now. Most of them have gone, but we've got this really good, really fresh crop of mid 20-somethings in the sport right now that are sort of leading the charge. And every week, those guys are running up front, man. It's the young talent.
Yeah.
These are the kids who grew up racing the newer technology, and they're just better right now. They just are. I mean, and it's quantifiable. You can look at the leaderboards every week and you can see who's at the top, man. And some of the older guys, the late 30s and early 40-somethings of the sport, they're lagging the fight a little bit. You saw it with Jimmy Johnson 5 to 10 years ago, man.
Yeah.
He won 7 championships in a row. Maybe it was 6 in a row. He won a bunch of championships in a row, right? And then his last 2 years, he went winless. You know, so I think naturally, as those guys age, you know, it's OBE, right? They're overcome by events, and the young talent has taken over the sport. And I'm really looking forward to, hopefully in the next couple of years, that those older guys just retire and
Oh
sort
my
of turn over
God.
the mantle to the young guys.
Yeah.
And I really wish that would happen in American politics right now.
I'm an ageist.
These fucking dinosaurs that are
Yeah.
up there, man, come
Fucking
on, dude.
retarded.
Like,
we need to get. They're a bunch of
move
fucking
on.
boomers,
Go be a
dude.
grandma or a grandpa somewhere. Go
Yeah,
write a
they're
fucking memoir,
boomers,
right? And
man.
turn it over to the younger guys.
Yeah, it's just we need young people involved. Although I don't know
Yeah.
if you would appreciate the outcomes as much, because the younger generation tends to be more progressive, you know,
Maybe.
cycle to cycle. But
maybe.
But I completely agree with you, dude. Like, I'm a total ageist, you know, like, and this goes for all of them: the Schumers, the McConnells, the Pelosi's. I mean, I don't think anybody should be up there after they're like,
pick your old guy that's shitting himself on
like,
the podium. They're all the same.
We age the presidency and Congress and all that stuff for how young you can be to
Mm-hmm.
run for office. We need to age it for how old you can be. You don't need you know, I mean, the fuck, I saw a picture the other day of like 2 senators in wheelchairs high-fiving each other in the rotunda.
Right.
I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me, right?
Fucking
These are the
bumper
people
cars
that are
with the
making
wheelchairs,
decisions for us. And they don't even, you know, they're, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. I do think that Overton window, and what I was going to say earlier was, when you look at the guys like James Carville and Bill Maher, you know, those guys who have been leftist their entire lives, and they're kind of like the old school Democrats, man, and they got a voice and they use it, right? When those guys are standing up and they're saying, "Look, dudes, like you're like our the things that we're trying to do now are so far out there that it's going to be very hard to sell this to the public." And I think the election results in November showed that a little bit, because the right side sort of took this back to basics kind of approach. Now, I will give you this, all right? There's a lot of things that the right side promised and they have not delivered on. And I see that argument. I see that a lot on social media right now, where it's like, where's the Epstein files? You know, where are the Kennedy files? All this shit that you promised in the election cycle. I'm like, hold up, dude, stop. Regardless of who is in that house, regardless, they're a politician. They're going to tell you a bunch of shit to get your vote. It worked. You fell for it. You got duped. Sorry, man. And now the dude's in there, right? So now all we can do is grade him on what he's actually doing.
Yeah, it's all distraction.
That's politics, right? The whole goal of politics, you're a poli-sci guy. The whole goal of politics is to gain and maintain power, right?
Yes, to an extent.
In the simplest form,
right?
In the simplest form, that's politics, right? And that was defined by Socrates or Plato or one of those guys.
Depends on the lens that you view the world through, which Trump is definitely a realist, and so it's all about power for him. And that's how it is for most people, honestly.
Maybe.
So there's
he
not
is
a
doing
lot of
some
collaboration that goes on anymore. That's the problem, I think.
Yeah,
we don't listen to each other, man. You know, politicians, it's so divided back there. They don't even listen to each other. They have their talking points. They spit piss and vinegar at each other, try to break each other down. The Democrats are just going to hold out to see if they can win the midterm elections and take one branch of the government back so that they can then fucking be a thorn in the side of.
Do you think that's what they're doing? They're just kind of holding their breath.
It's the same thing the Republicans did when Biden won. I mean, that's what they always do. That's what both parties always do. They go, well, fuck it. We can probably, everything moves so slow anyways. We can probably stall stuff enough for 2 years that we can, because typically, you know, whoever wins in the presidential election loses in the midterm. Because guess what? They make all these promises. They get in. People are like, "Hey, none of that stuff's happened 2 years later," and they get voted out.
Yeah. That's pretty standard.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But until they start to collaborate and actually listen to each other and try to find middle ground on things, it's just shit doesn't go anywhere.
Now, well, I mean, look at that address to Congress a couple weeks ago.
Oh God,
that was
horrible.
That was kind of America at its worst, almost. You know,
yeah. I agree.
The things that he was touting on the stage, he probably shouldn't have touted a little bit. but the reaction from the crowds
Yeah,
was
he stuck
equally
it from
bad.
Trump. It was.
The optics of it is
Yeah,
just it's not
horrible.
great.
Yeah.
It's not great. And right, wrong, or indifferent, the optics suck. It's
Yeah.
like it's not terribly different than the optics of the president meeting with Zelensky in the office and the optics of that blow up and that confrontation.
Don't get me started on that one.
Yeah, well, we're not privy to the behind the scenes stuff, and we don't know what led up to it. And yeah, the
Behind the
optics of it
scenes,
look really
dude. What are
bad.
you talking about, Roscoe?
I'm talking about the optics of it, Cass.
No, tell me
It
about
looked really
leadership,
bad.
man. Yeah, it was
What's that?
horrible. I said,
Yeah.
talk about leadership, man. Like, is that? I mean, even if you break it down to a lower scale, is that something that you would expect somebody in that level or that power to do publicly?
No, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I would have liked to have thought that those guys could have been a little bit more professional and grown up about the situation.
God,
Sure.
we're such a joke right
Um,
now.
And
The rest of the
then,
world is laughing at us right now.
well,
Like Europe
take that.
Europe and Canada, Mexico. I mean, they're just full up going, you guys are a bunch of fucking morons. Seriously.
Take your same argument, take your own argument, and apply it to that address to Congress. It's not that much different.
No, I agree with
The
you.
optics of it are fucking terrible. You got an old geriatric with a cane standing up and yelling at the president in the middle on the congressional floor. You want to talk about decorum?
Yeah, no,
Dude,
I tell you, the Democrats were horrible.
Seriously, man, there are fucking rules. Like you and I, even you and I, when we would sit in briefings, and these are just like briefings with our bros. You shut the fuck up, man.
The Democrats.
Sorry, he's the president and he has the fucking floor.
Dude,
shut up.
Bully pulpit. That's what the president. That's the one thing the president gets.
You don't have to like it. Yeah. And you know what? When it's over, you get a chance for a rebuttal and you can go and talk to all the cameras you want to. But when you're on the House floor, shut the fuck up, man.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Just like your argument about being in the Oval Office. Hey, swallow hard. We're going to talk about this when the cameras are off. Right? But for right now, let's put a smile on our face. I agree with you.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Holy shit, that was a 21-minute rant that's going to lead us into our topic for today.
What's our topic? Just joking.
20 types of people you can't be friends with.
I can't be friends with you anymore. No,
well, I was just about to give you a compliment, but you know what? Fuck you. Because you're number one. You're always complaining about everything.
That's right. I complain all the time.
Negative Nancy over here.
That's right.
On a little bit of a more serious note, though, that number one, types of people you can't be friends with. Number one, it's always people who are always complaining. That's that negative Nancy, man. That's the negative energy put out into the universe. And it's one thing for you and I to sit here and have a friendly banter back and forth. And we agree, we disagree, whatever, but we're still buddies at the end, right?
That's right.
And generally speaking, you're a happy guy. And I like to think that I'm a pretty happy guy. Because I believe that if I put out positive vibes into the universe, I'm going to get positive vibes back.
Yeah.
And I actually had to get on, not get on to, but I had to kind of check one of my my close relatives a couple of weeks ago, because they were bringing up some of this kind of stuff in a very negative light.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what I did for a month when I was overseas? I didn't read about this shit.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the news. I just kind of cleansed my palate a little bit, and I'm happy. And so I don't really want to get into all that.
Yeah. And I think that's legit too, right? Like sometimes in relationships, because like you were saying, like you and I have disagreed for years on things, and that's okay, right? You and I can have disagreements, and that's okay. It doesn't shape our perception, or it doesn't affect our relationship in that sense, right?
We're still friends.
We just have it. It's just we grew up differently. We view the world a little differently through different lenses on certain things. But sometimes you get people that do want to just like poke the bear and dig, and are indignant, right? And those are typically a little more your black and white thinkers, because they have to be right and they want to let you know that they're right and that you're wrong. And those are good people to set boundaries with, or just fucking shit can altogether, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good plan. And that kind of feeds into number two, the people who love drama and thrive on chaos.
We call them extroverts. No.
Well,
just joking.
Well, maybe not. Excuse me. I don't want to paint Katie in a negative light here, but I think it was last July 13th, when Trump, the assassination attempt up in Pennsylvania, right? And that day, Katie went on to Twitter, and she hadn't been on Twitter in like, I don't even know. I didn't even know she had an account. Maybe she created one right there. But then all the way up until the election, I'd come home from work every day and she'd be telling me, "Hey, did you hear about da 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 da?" And she's sitting here, and I used to joke with her. I was like, "Dude, you're sitting here seriously. You're watching disaster porn.
Yeah, doom
That's what
scrolling.
you're just watching a fucking train wreck over and over and over and over
Yeah.
again. And like, go for a walk, enjoy a breeze. You know what I mean? And that's, and to be fair, once the election was over and that drama kind of died off after that, whatever. She doesn't go on Twitter, X, whatever the fuck now anymore. But for that 3 or 4 months, man, there were a lot of people who just thrived on that chaos and really enjoyed the drama of everything and the pageantry of the election cycle. And I'm just like, whatever, dude. I'm going for a jog.
And I think more importantly too, like if we talk more about just like social interaction and personal relationships, like these are people typically who like to gossip, right? And like to be in everybody's business.
Maybe.
And I personally don't like people like that in my life because I don't know when it's going to be my turn for them to gossip on or try to be in my business.
Everybody gets a turn.
By the way, get it 100% wrong, right? Like I'd rather be in a relationship with somebody like you who I may disagree with, but at least I think I can trust that Roscoe, if you had a question, if you heard something, you're like, that doesn't sound right with Cass. I'm going to go fucking ask him. Right. And then we could have a conversation about it and you could get whatever truth data there was or my perspective on whatever was going on instead of what often happens, which is, people make assumptions about what somebody's going through or why somebody's acting the way they are or what's going on in their life. They start to gossip and pass that shit on as truth value. Everybody jumps on board with it, and the next thing you know, you're the person sitting over there going, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Like, you don't just ask me the goddamn question next time. So those are definitely
that's a good point
to avoid.
That's a good point, man. And, for me personally, I think a lot of that's personality driven. And I would probably characterize that to a lot of people. A lot of that's personality driven, where I have no fucking problems going straight to the source.
Yeah.
Hey, I heard this about you, and
I think
there was an example
of
age, experience, confidence, sure. But I think some of it's personality, and I've always been one of those. Hey, man, I'm going to ask you. Here's a funny story. Like, when I was a kid, my dad on the farm, my dad had this tractor that was an open cab tractor, no cab, no air conditioning, everything. It had like a metal roof on it, and that was it. And we used to ride up when we were kids. We would ride up on the fender of it, and my dad used to tell us all the time. He's like, "Hey, be careful, hang on, so you don't fall off." So we called it the fall off tractor. So he hires this guy. He hires this black guy that's got this really like messed up ear. I don't know what was wrong with it. I don't know. It wasn't cauliflower ear. It was some kind of physical deformity he had, but he was my dad's helper. And I was out riding the fall off tractor with, his name was Duval. I'm riding with Duval that day. And, I'm sitting on the left fender and he's driving and it was his left ear. So I'm like staring at his ear the whole time. Remember the last episode where he talked about don't stare at people?
Yeah.
I probably hadn't learned that lesson yet. So anyways, I just fucking asked him. I was like, "Hey dude, what's wrong with your ear?" And he goes, "I don't know. It's like that since I was born." Okay. And, so even from an early age, I think I was very comfortable just fucking ask the question, man, because what's the worst they're going to tell you? The worst answer you're going to get is no or fuck off. And that's really kind of where it is. I had a situation come up at work this week where, something happened. We're sort of in a battle between employees and management right now. And something happened that I didn't agree with, went straight to the manager. "Hey man, where'd this come from?" And he goes, "Oh, well, it came from higher than me." Right? Okay, cool. And I walked down the hallway and went to that person. "Hey, where did this come from?"
Yeah, I think that's a good way to approach it too, right? It's just be upfront because there are people that like that drama and they like to stir the pot. They like to create those, I don't know. They even, we've all seen it in our own lives too. Probably people that just like to kind of stir the pot a little bit and create a little bit of derision. Like we saw that the 425th with certain individuals, they'd kind of run around behind people's back and be
Drama
like,
queen.
"Oh, well, did you hear about this?" And, "Oh, did you know? Oh, well, guess what? They're actually trying to do this." And like they try to passive aggressively manipulate people. Like you don't need that shit in your life, boys. And if you're one of those people, knock it the fuck off. Like Get some help.
Yeah. I wonder if those people have just, well, I would guess probably that those people have probably never done a lot of the things that we talk about on our show with identifying some of the traits that make you,
Yeah.
and the things that you value, because I think if they were to do that, they would learn to appreciate that, man, I don't like it when people talk shit about behind my back. Maybe I should take some ownership here and just kind of do my thing and let the cards fall where they may.
Yeah, I think in general, there's probably a lack of self-awareness and self-inspection. And there's probably a lot of insecurity there, right? And so there's a need to be
Yeah.
better than others, or to at least have people think that you're maybe operating at a better level than other people are. And so what do? You gossip and you spread rumors to break other
Yeah.
people down because it makes you look better.
Like you're compensating almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. It'd be fun. It'd be fun to get some of those guys to reach out to some of those people that I know you and I are talking about the same person here, but
Yeah.
let's reach out to them and get them on the show.
Okay.
And maybe run through it with them and go, hey man, like what's been going on? First of all, what's been going on for the last, I don't know, what's it been, 7 years now?
Yeah, it's been a while.
What's been going
Been a
on for the
minute.
last 7 years? Who are you as a person now? And let's dive into it and let's
Yeah.
find out.
That'd be cool.
Be interesting. Put them on not to put them on the spot, but maybe hopefully to get them to think a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to skip down a little bit here, and there's a guy who never takes responsibility for their mistakes. Sort of the person that you were just talking about a little bit, but the kind of person that blames others and doesn't really have any
Always somebody
accountability.
else's fault.
Yeah, and here's my PSA, man, that humility is a superpower, dude. And when you finally get to a point where you can raise your hand and take ownership of it and just say, yeah, fuck that up, man, and move on. Really,
Yeah.
just like most of the time, I think you'll find that it's not a big deal. Most of the time.
No, and I think that a lot of times too, you'll find that if you can do that, as long as you're not like repeating the same mistakes over and over, if you can do that, especially with, leadership or management or whoever, like you'll actually create a better,
Go ahead.
like you actually create a better reputation for yourself, right? Just as a straight shooter, as opposed to somebody who's just like, well, John didn't tell me, or, well, it's not my fault because these people didn't do this or that. Right. And so, yeah, I think,
Oh, there we go.
just take ownership, man.
Yeah.
Be honest.
Dude, I can't see shit anymore. I'm fucking blind.
I'm right there with you, bro.
God damn. Age. Fuck that.
If it's up close, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
Without my
seriously.
glasses on.
Katie bought me some readers like 4 or 5 years ago for Christmas and put them in my stocking because I was complaining about not being able to see shit. And she did it as a joke, but now every year she buys me new readers. So it's become a staple. No, dude, I agree with you, dude. And I know that just for me personally, right? And I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but it took a long time for me to kind of get to that point. But once I did, I found a lot of freedom in that. Because I found in a lot of cases, two things. One, it's a little bit liberating when you can just say, yeah, fuck that up, man. Or I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. And then the other thing is you open a door for other people to help you.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're lowering a wall or taking down a barrier between you and the knowledge of the universe, and when you're able to open yourself up by saying, yeah, dude, I screwed that up, or I don't have the answer to that, then now you're inviting that other person to come and maybe fill in that gap for you.
Yeah.
And that just makes you a better, more well-rounded person and make you better for the next time.
Yeah, I think, well, it's part of that humility, right? It makes you more approachable.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the third thing that I would add to that too, though, Roscoe, is if you're the other person who's always trying to push blame onto other things, or maybe push forward a persona or a view of yourself that's a little bit false, and trying to kind of pull the wool over everybody's eyes, that's a fucking house of cards. And when you do it the first time, it may be easy because you can keep that one in check. But when you do it the second time and the third time and the fourth time and the fifth time, it starts becoming very difficult to understand and remember, okay, what did I tell this person, or what's the expectation here, or what have I said about myself with these, right? And eventually, like, you will be exposed. And that's not going to be pretty. As opposed to just up front going, hey, I fucked it up, press, right? Like, move forward and
And that's great,
and go
dude,
from there.
because you've given examples on here before of guys who would get up in a debrief and try to kind of gloss over something that like, we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
Is nobody going to bring up the fact that number one died?
Yeah.
And those kinds of things, like and if you just smooth that over, man, well, A, you're not maximizing your opportunity for learning in that specific instance, but B, everybody in the crowd thinks you're a giant piece of shit now.
Yeah.
Right. So the next time you're the leader, they're going to go into that with some preconceived notions.
Well, and what I would say too is, like, if you're doing those types of things where you're trying to, like, if you like let's go back to the debrief example, like, for guys to try to hide something in a debrief to think that nobody else is going to see it. One, you're probably wrong that nobody else is going to see it, right?
We were all there, dude.
There's fucking smarter people in the room than you.
Yeah.
That know exactly what the fuck happened and what needs to be addressed. So you're probably not going to get away with it. And two, if you do think that you're the smartest person in the room, then you probably need to go find a different room, right? You need to be around people that are smarter than you, so that you can actually learn shit and grow and figure some things out, ways to improve, right? So yeah, and again, I think a lot of times it goes back to insecurity. Most of the times when I saw guys trying to hide stuff in debriefs, it was that fear of failure. Like, they thought, well, maybe if I can sneak this by, I won't bust the ride, or it was just a lack of desire for accountability. Like, hey, we're going to blame the fact that we had 5 frats tonight on the fact that the interrogator was fucked up, not that our game plan and our execution of that game plan was fucked up, right? Because we're eagle guys, we're C model guys, we're badass. We don't make mistakes.
This is all we do. Not a pound for every ground.
It's not our fault that the interrogator sucked, right? It's just so yeah.
I think that first example that you gave there, the guy who, if I can just get past this little piece here, then maybe I won't bust the ride. I would submit that some of that is just normal, natural human behavior, because nobody likes to fail. Nobody likes to be told they suck, and if that's the one thing that's gonna do it, I might speed past that in the debrief. But in the long run, if you're looking at it on a scale of longevity, I think in the long run, you're probably going to get more out of it if you just take ownership of it, get what you can out of it, and then move on. And I've written a lot of stories lately that sort of have that tone, that are cases and examples of me learning that lesson the hard way. And sometimes it takes you getting your nuts crushed a few times to realize that, man, this is for my good. This is for my own good.
Yeah. Again, it's just, don't be afraid of failure. Recognize that as an opportunity to learn, right? To take lessons learned, to be able to apply them to whatever the next iteration is. That's all it is. It's just an opportunity to get better, instead of trying to hide something or pretend like something didn't happen because you don't want to face that failure, or you don't want to be accountable for it, or you're worried about what people are going to think if that happens. Like, people are going to think more of you if you just take it on the chin and have accountability and go, hey, yep, screwed that up, but here's how I'm going to fix it for the next time, and press, right? Like, that's a better answer.
That is very hard to learn, though.
It is, and it's hard to do sometimes.
And I think it takes a little bit of a level of maturation to be able to get there.
Agreed.
There's one on the list down here. I'm just kind of skipping around, dude.
That's fine. I'll just follow your lead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, feel free to fucking take over, man, because I don't know what I'm doing. Pretends to be someone they're not. And I will just offer very simply, man, if you're pretending to be someone you're not, then why don't you do the work to be that person that you want to be instead? That's Now, I know that's easy to say, and it's much harder to do. But there's 2 realities, really. You can sit here and you can complain and bitch about being the person that you want to be, or you can do the work and be that person. And that's it. Those are your 2 realities, right? You're either going to be who you are right now, or you're going to become another person. And in order to do that, it's not rhetoric and talk that's going to do that. It's action. So you're, regardless of who that person is or what that person is, if it's the 6-pack abs on the beach next summer, dude, you're going to have to put in some work, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think maybe just be a little honest and gracious with yourself too, right? Because I mean, I can think of so many examples in my own personal life of people that I've had who I've been close to, who project one thing and in some ways even go through the steps to make it seem like that's what they are, but in reality they're 180 out, right? So like for example, I can think of somebody who I was close to for a very long time, that it faith was very important to them, right? This projection of faith, and I'm a strong Christian, and all of these things was very pivotal and a big focus in their life, right? But the reality was something completely different, right? Just because you go to church on Sunday, or just because you sing in the choir on Sunday, or things like that, when you're when you're out doing other things, and you're not holding yourself accountable to some of your own actions, right? When you're out, well, I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm uber Christian, but let me go see if I can pick people up on Friday night at the bar somewhere while I'm drinking my ass off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm uber Christian, but I'm gonna go have an affair over here on my spouse because my needs aren't being met, and rather than having a conversation around that, I'm just gonna do my thing. But it's okay because Jesus is going to forgive me, but he's not going to forgive you, kind of a thing, right? It's just like, be honest with yourselves, right? Like, guess what? We all have issues. We all have things that we need to work on. We all have ways that we fail. Take some accountability for it, own it, and go to work on it. Like you said, Roscoe, it's really hard to do. Like all of the stuff that we've always talked about with self-inspection and self-awareness, like, dude, it's fucking hard. I can remember when Francis, when we first started doing that stuff with him after we had the wingman stuff, he's like, especially at the beginning, because you start to recognize these patterns in your life, and like more and more kind of gets exposed the more you start to think of it, and you're like, holy shit, and then at some point you're like, what the God, man, I'm super fucked up. How do does figuring out how fucked up I am ever end? And it's like, yeah, it kind of does, especially as you go to task on these things. But yeah, it's hard. It's not easy.
And I don't know. I learned something. I learned something new about myself all the time. And it's ironic, we talk about the self-inspection and kind of getting inside your own head, but it's usually somebody else that points it out to me now that, hey man, you need to work on this a little bit, or, you have this thing about you that, maybe not be seen in such a positive light, but, I can't miss the fact that now we've talked about politics and religion. So, I guess we got to talk about sports at some point so that we can just completely disagree about everything today. I think that
did we disagree about religion? I don't think we disagreed about religion.
Not yet.
You're an atheist,
those types
right?
of people that you brought up. No, those types of people that you brought up, man, I've had a problem with them for a long time.
Yeah.
This is my problem with mainstream religion writ large is you have this group of people who thinks that they're better than everybody else in a lot of cases, and they don't say it out loud, right? The message that they tell you out loud is, oh, come on in, everybody's welcome here. But then in the back of their mind, they're very judgmental.
Yeah.
And I'm talking like extreme generalities here, right?
Oh, sure.
I know that there's people out there who are not like this. I get it. But but the person that you were talking about, that's the guy specifically that I'm talking about, is he's probably very judgmental of others, right? Takes no accountability of his own actions and says things like you just said, like, oh, it's okay because I'll go pray on Sunday and
God will forgive me.
And God will forgive me, and so I'm okay, right? When deep down, dude, you're just not a good person.
Yeah,
like,
that's just it, right?
You need to do some work, right? Because you're not a good person.
And not just a good person, but most of those people aren't very happy. Like,
going to church on Sunday is not going to cover a lot of that shit up.
Yeah.
Go back to our 1 of 5 example, right? You have a group on Sunday that you hang out with, and they think this of you. And then you have that group on Friday nights that think this of you, and then you have that person that you're having the affair with that thinks this of you, right?
Yeah.
So I would argue that you probably need to inspect your circles a little more closely,
right?
to that specific person. Now we can go off on a tangent and we can talk about religion all day, but that
No, but
notwithstanding,
I think there's something really important about what you just said, though, Roscoe, was like, right. So if you've got, so there's three different versions of you, right? There's the version of you with the person that you're having an affair with. There's a version of you that you project for the people that you're in the church circle with, and then there's a version of you that is the version that shows up and drinks with your friends at the bar on Friday night, right? So there's a lot of inconsistency between that, right? And what we want people to do is get to a place where, by defining their own personal values, they get to a level of consistency. That's called practicing integrity, right? You get to a level of consistency in your actions, in your behaviors, in your words, that kind of falls in line with whatever it is you value, right? So you can't sit there and say, well, I value family or faith or whatever, and then be doing some of these other things, right? So you've got to clean up those areas in your life. And I think that's a really important thing to point out, because if you are one of those people who, and that's not to say that you may not have, friends that you do certain things with and then friends that you do other things with, and I'm not saying, I'm the guy that said, get drunk on Friday night and make bad decisions. So I'm not saying don't go out and have a drink every once in a while, or
hey, Jesus drank wine.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, come on.
They were obviously drinking all the time back then.
He even had a side piece with Mary Magdalene.
But honestly, if you're if define your values and whatever's important to you, start to reflect those things in what you do and be consistent in that. That's what we want to get you guys to, and if you're showing up as three different versions of yourself, then there's obviously some incongruence there, and we need to get a little self-awareness, do a little self-inspection to figure that out, drill down, and find where that consistency can start to come from.
Very well said. Much more articulate than I could have put it. Balance in all things in moderation,
and it's different, right?
Yeah.
So, it's just, it's different for different people. Not everything, family may be really big into somebody, to one person, and that may be a defining value. So how do I fit my actions and all that stuff to support that? Where for somebody else, it may be, success and a focus on a career and not family. And that's okay. But you got to, my point is you got to define those things so that you can find that consistency.
Well, yeah. And with both of those people, I would submit that there's probably some cost benefit analysis that needs to go in there. For the guy who's chasing a career, it's going to cost you some things.
Yeah.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah.
And for the person who wants to focus on only family, that's going to cost you some things. You're going to potentially lose some freedoms, freedom of maneuver, financial freedom, whatever it is. But that comes down to an individual level, and we're certainly not here to dictate or anything. We're just offering you a roadmap on, try to figure some of that stuff out for yourself. Try to do some of that introspection. Try to figure those things out, and then maybe start working towards a little bit of balance in your life.
Yeah, because we don't want that incongruence.
Yeah,
that's a bad thing, and that's what'll get you in trouble, because you set certain expectations that you're not going to meet. You set certain expectations with groups and people, and fuck them. I mean, it's just for yourself, right? You set certain expectations. You have certain ideas for yourself that you're not going to meet.
Well, and that kind of falls into that perception is reality kind of discussion. If you're one person on Sunday and then you're another person on Friday nights, well, those two groups of people, they have a different perception of you, right? If you were to walk into the bar on a Friday night and start proselytizing to these people, then that's going to shake the game up a little bit.
Yeah.
The same way that it would if you brought a 6-pack to church.
Yeah.
So that's the perceptions that you have. These other groups have these different perceptions of you, when in reality, what I would hope that everybody would get to a point is, like you said, man, is that consistency. This is who I am, right? We used to have a saying called Wuzzy Wug. What you see is what you get, man.
Yeah.
It ain't for everybody, but this is it, right? And I try to be as consistent as I can with the actions and the words, right? And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If I were to go to church on Sunday and sit down with the preacher and he asked me about, I had some beers the other night. What? That's who I am. I enjoy socializing with other people. I enjoy, this, that, and another. If you're that kind of guy, then own it. Don't try to hide it. Then own it, right? And if you find that when you own it, you're a little bit embarrassed about it, maybe then start rethinking it.
Yeah, well, that's where it goes back to just taking the time to define those values, right? Because, so like, I think that's important too, because one of the things that's on this list is, people that are very judgy, right? We want to kind of avoid those
Yeah.
people, right? And I think that we've talked about this before. I think it's important to be curious and not judgmental. Like even in the conversations that you and I started with, right? We may disagree, but you may have a point, or you may say something in our conversation, even if my initial response is to disagree with you,
Yeah.
that maybe information that I didn't have before, or may give me a perspective that I didn't consider before. And so rather than just go, oh, well, you're fucking, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm right, you're wrong, black and white kind of a thinking. I
Mhm.
try to listen, right? So that I can understand your point of view, your perspective, where you're coming from, because it may inform me on something that I never considered before,
Yeah.
right? And then I can learn something from that.
Yeah.
But that said, I think the important thing to stress is if you're in relationships with people, everything they do is information. Like, you don't necessarily have to get mad or upset when people do certain things. Just accept whatever their actions are as information. Now, when those actions over time start to provide you the same feedback, that's where I think that's the point where it's okay to make a judgment call and go, okay, well, every time I call Roscoe, he's too busy to talk to me. But every time he calls me, he expects me to sit on the phone for an hour and a half and listen to all his worries and concerns.
That
I'm
checks.
not getting a lot of emotional equity in this relationship anymore. It's probably okay to make the judgment that he's not looking to have this relationship be reciprocal as a friendship. He's just looking for me to be available to him when he needs me to be. And now I can
Mm.
make a judgment from that, right? Now I can make a decision with that information and go,
Yeah.
yeah, hey, and then I can go back to my values and I go, am I okay with that? Understanding that is this how I want to show up in my relationship with Roscoe? Yes. Okay, then yeah, dude, we'll keep it going for now. Or maybe I'll go,
Yeah.
I'll have a conversation. Go, hey, dude, I noticed when we talk, it's a little one sided. And when I call you and I need a little help, you're not available. But when you call me, there's kind of an expectation. And I
Mhm.
just wanted to see if that's, or maybe I just go, you know what, this isn't what I want in a relationship or
Yeah.
in a friendship. And so I'm just going
Yep.
to kind of start to let this thing slide.
Well, there's two people on that list that you're talking about. Number 6 always makes it about them, never about you. Number 12 doesn't celebrate your wins, only their own. And that's exactly the guy you're talking about. And I don't think in the example that you just gave, I don't think I would not consider that being judgmental. I would consider that making a informed decision
Yeah.
based on
Making a
behavior,
judgment. That's
right?
right.
Yeah, you're making a judgment. You're not being judgmental,
Yeah.
right? Being judgmental is when I walk through the airport and I'm judging the outfits that some of these people are wearing. Being judgmental
Dude, don't get
is
me
on our
started on
last show
pajama
where
pants
you
again.
started going
Do
off on
not start
pajama
me on
pants,
pajama
right?
pants again.
See,
I have some hard
for
lines.
yours is pajamas, mine is yogurt pants. I don't. There are some people that should not be wearing yogurt pants,
Yes.
but so when people are constantly making it about them, that's an imbalance in the relationship. The same as number 12, don't celebrate your wins, only their own. That's an imbalance in the relationship. And when we talk about emotional equity, when we talk about that emotional bank account,
Yeah.
that's kind of it. If you're constantly making the deposits and they're constantly taking the withdrawals, well, that's an imbalance, man. And you either need to balance it or, just like any other investment, you cut it and you run.
Yeah, well, and I think one thing that I'll say to that is just recognize that if there's a relationship you have, whether it's with a spouse, a significant other, or a friend, there may be times where there is imbalance, right? So, like, if you called me tomorrow and you and Katie decided you were going to get divorced, there may be a period of time where I'm going to go, yeah, dude, I'm going to answer the phone. I'm going to show up. There's going to be a
Yeah.
little inequity in this relationship right now because you need that from me and you're my friend and that's how I want to show up for you. I think that's even more the case outside of friendships with spouses and significant others. We talk about, hey, marriage is 50-50 proposition, and that's a bunch of fucking bullshit. It's not.
That's exactly what I was about to bring up.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm at 90% and Alicia's at 10, and that's where we're at. Sometimes I'm at 10 and
Yep.
she's carrying the weight, and that's where we're at. So there's a give and take, there's an ebb and flow. And that's where, again, if you know what your values are and how you want to show up in a given relationship based on, the person, the amount of time you've been together or in a friendship with one another, and the track record of how things are, it's not 50-50. You're not always going to get that equity back.
It rarely is.
Yeah, but there's still people worth investing that in, and that that hey, dude, there may be this period of time where it's going to be a little one-sided or whatever, but that's okay because that's how I want to show up in this relationship. I care about this person, and I know that if the tables are turned, I'll get it back, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the key piece right there is in a solid relationship, you're going to be needy at some point. You're going to need something. Roscoe, can you help me come over here? We're moving. Can you come over and help us out? You got a truck and a trailer. Yeah, dude, I'll come out. Because you know what? In a couple of years, I might need something.
Yeah.
Cass, I'm broke down on the side of the road, man. Can you come bail me out of this? Yeah, dude. So, but that's one of those cases, though, I think, that in any well-established relationship, you have to know that it's never 50-50.
Yeah.
It never is.
No.
Right? There's always that ebb and flow back and forth. And that goes back up to number 6, when you're always making it about you instead of at least including the other person. And dude, I like to tell stories, and my life is interesting, at least to me. And I like to share that with other people. But every now and then I have to remind myself, hey, man, what's going on in Cass's world? Let me find out what's good, because he might have done something fun and cool this week.
Yeah.
Turns
Probably
out
not,
you didn't.
but
You
no,
suck. You're
I do
boring.
suck.
So I moved on with another story.
Well, and what I would just say too is to younger men, if you're looking like, let's say maybe you just got into a relationship, girlfriend, whatever, right? And you're looking for a certain amount of emotional equity, but it takes some time to get to know somebody. And what I would just say is, don't be passive aggressive about it too, right? Like, if you're in a relationship with somebody, you might need to verbalize what you need from them. You may have to tell them, hey, dude, I don't feel like my needs are being met in this way, or hey, these are things that are really important to me. If it's the beginning of a relationship, whatever those things are, and make that aware to them. Don't be passive aggressive about it. Don't expect them to read your mind or know, how are you feeling or what's going on for you. Be courageous enough to have those conversations. You don't have to be like, hey, you're not meeting my needs and this is what I need, right? It can be more like, hey, I know that, our relationship's new, but over the last couple of weeks with this kind of behavior, this is how this is making me feel. And I just want to clear the air and see if, where you're at, do a check-in with you. I mean, Alicia and I still do check-ins all the time around stuff like that, like just to make sure that we're not, misperceiving each other's intentions, or because, dude, we're fucking human, and as well as we both know each other, I still get it wrong sometimes. She does too, right? She misperceives sometimes the scowl on my face because she thinks I'm mad about something she said or did, when really I'm thinking about how the fuck, like, the Seahawks just signed Sam Darnold, and what's that really gonna fucking look like, right? So like, that's what the scowl is, right? It has nothing to do with I'm like pissed off that DK Metcalf is going to be in Pittsburgh now. So
there you go, talking about sports again.
Not really.
There's a classic meme floating around the social medias right now where it's like a girl sitting up in bed and a guy who's rolled over facing the other way, and she's all like, I bet you he's thinking about me, or, that argument we had, or the dinner sucked or something. And he's thinking about like what Jeep parts he's going to buy.
Right.
Yeah. And as you were telling that story, as you were talking about that, I was thinking, it's often the nonverbals that we either miscommunicate or misperceive. I think the verbal is generally, you can kind of get it, if somebody who's very intentional and specific with their words, I would offer to that person, and this is a lesson that I had to learn really the hard way, and I still fuck it up all the time, is try to be deliberate, and remove some of the emotion, especially in an argument, or even a disagreement, like what we were having at the beginning. Try to remove emotion from that and just talk, and because when you start to add emotion to it, then the inflection changes and the tone changes and things like that, and that's where you can create some tension and friction.
Yeah, and I think that and I think it's harder when you're younger because, especially if you weren't raised in maybe an environment where communication was focused on, or, how to communicate correctly was talked about, or things like that in relationships. It can be difficult to do. It can be, and, as in general, as boys and men too, we're not really typically taught to verbally express our feelings. or
Certainly not
concerns
taught to
or
emote.
wants or
Yeah.
needs, but the more, especially for a significant other or a relationship like that, I think the more that you can establish just kind of healthy lines of communication, open communication, the better off that relationship is going to be. Don't be one of those
Yeah.
passive aggressive fucks that expects people to read your mind. Because what you're eventually going to do is, one, you're just going to get pissed off because your needs are going to go unmet because nobody knows what the fuck's going through your stupid head. And two, the people that are trying to please you are eventually just going to go, well, nothing ever works, so fuck it, I'm not going to do anything anymore. And that never ends well either. So you're just going to force people into resentment.
Yeah, that's like Pavlov's dog, man. You get beat so many times, you start to develop new behaviors around that.
Self-licking ice cream cone.
Yeah. So, number 12, we just talked about, doesn't celebrate your wins, only their own. And then skipping down to number 14, feels threatened by anyone else's success. And I went through a really long period where that was me. And I think the reason is I had a sense of entitlement. And I developed that sense of entitlement based on the messaging that I was getting from other people who were saying, "Hey, man, you're doing great. Keep up the good work. You're the front runner for this, or you're on a fast track for this, that, or the other." And I sort of developed this sense of entitlement. Well, then we get into a situation. We were downrange, and guys are going out and they're dropping bombs left and right. And I was like one of the last ones in the squadron. And until I finally broke that seal or whatever, popped that cherry, so to speak, I was resentful of those other people. And I remember specifically there was an encounter. I was at the ops desk after a sortie. I'd flown as number 2. Number 1, we got called to a troops in contact. Number 1 dropped a bomb, right? And the DO comes up and goes, "Hey, heard you guys had a good flight?" Yeah. Well, so-and-so got to drop a weapon. Did he do good? I said, "Yeah, well, he had this patch in his front seat, so it's kind of hard for him to fuck that up, right?" And the DO looked at me and goes, "Hey, dude, he did good. Don't take that away from him. He did good." And I still remember that interaction. And I didn't learn that lesson that day. So I'm not trying to be like, pound my chest and saying, "Yeah, well, that was my turning point," or whatever. No. It took a long time for me to get past that. I finally broke the cherry and I got mine, so to speak. But that was something that was very hard to me. And now when I look back on it, dude, this is the power of doing the inspection and owning your shit, right? Is when you look back on it and you reflect on those situations. I was missing that gratitude of just being there in that environment and being able to offer what I could to the guys to make the team that much better. And it's like when we had who was the Marine colonel that we had, your buddy from PACAF?
Jernigan.
When we had Jernigan on, and he says the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back. And dude, I fucking love that statement. I totally stole that shit.
Yeah.
But that was it, man. And it was a lack of gratitude ultimately, and that sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
And when I hadn't earned it yet, but I thought that I should have been.
Well, I think what's important about what you said too, Roscoe, is if you're in a situation like that, and don't get me wrong, sometimes it's luck and timing, right? Sometimes we always say better lucky than good, right? Sometimes luck and timing does play a part in this, but let's say you're in a situation like that where you feel like you're really working hard, you're doing all the right things, but you're not getting the accolades, and there's that shiny penny in the corner that keeps getting the award or the recognition or whatever. Well, when you get an attitude like that, where it's like, well, this is bullshit, fuck them, I work just as hard. Maybe that's not the case, right? And when you have that attitude, I think what it does is it prevents you from being open to having accountability around, am I missing something?
Yeah.
Are they
100%.
really doing something to a higher level, to a greater degree than I am? Am I not paying close enough attention to figure out what is really the thing that's, and maybe they are, maybe they're their manager's favorite pet rock, and it doesn't have anything to do with you. But I would say that probably 90% of the time, there's something else there. And when you have an attitude like that, you're not going to see it for what it is, and you're not going to be able to figure out what you need to change, or maybe what you need to improve upon, or what skill you may need to add to the repertoire, or maybe just what relationship you need to build to jump to that next level, right? Or to get the accolade on the next event, if that's what you're looking for. So I think it prevents you from going to task on that a little bit sometimes.
In a situation that I just described, it was totally random.
Yeah.
I mean, it was nobody's fault.
Sure. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Tick, yeah.
You know, you take off at 3:00 in the afternoon on a Thursday, and maybe the bad guys are active, maybe they're not.
Yeah.
You know, and it was totally random. And you know, I look back on it now, and the scheduling shop did a really good job of managing what we called sortie equity, so that you didn't have a guy coming out with, 90 combat sorties and a guy coming out with 45 combat sorties. I remember this example, we would have guys that had to go to Al-Udeid and spend 2 weeks at the chaos as part of, just their additional duty or whatever. And it was usually like a mid-senior level captain or whatever to go be an LNO down there. But when they got home, dude, those guys flew every day to get caught back up on their sortie equity trackers, and you might have a guy that sat alert 3 times over the last 2 weeks, and he got airborne every time sitting on alert. And then I sat airborne 3 times and I didn't get called. I played a lot of Call of Duty, so it was totally random. But at the time, I couldn't see that. At the time, all I saw was, well, little Johnny got to drop a bomb and Fred got to drop a bomb. And I'm sitting over here going, I'm pissed off because I didn't get to, So anyways, retrospection. Luckily I was able to get past that a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
Dude, there's a bunch more on the list. You want to keep going, or do you want to?
No, we can.
You want to call it a day, or what?
We can grab a few more if you want.
Fuck it, let's keep it going. Here, you sort of brought this back up, or brought this up earlier. Number 15, somebody who lies about everything, big and small. 2 issues with that: you're a fucking liar. You're a dishonest human being, which is bad. But second of all, is those things snowball, and then you forgot which story you told to which person. And dude, all right, let me throw this out there, okay? This is not, to me, and this is just my opinion, this is not the same as the fish gets a little bit bigger every time you tell the story. Okay, that's not necessarily the same thing. It's saying, I was a quarterback at college, when in fact you didn't even go to college, or something like that, and then you lose track of these things, and you get what I'm saying.
Well, and that's what happens though, right? Is you find a new group of friends and you feel a need to go, dude, I played quarterback at college, blah, 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 blah. And then guess what? You don't think anything of it. And then Thanksgiving rolls around and everybody wants to go do the turkey bowl, and you show up and everybody's like, hey, I did. And then
he was a QB.
And you can't throw a ball past 15 fucking yards. Guess what? Like, everybody's going to be like, I thought you said you were a...
I mean, that was
my shoulder's back.
I'm old now, my shoulder,
So, I mean, it'll eventually catch up with you, is all I'm saying. So it's not even worth it, dude. Like, just be proud of who you are and what you've done, and you don't have to impress anybody.
Well, you don't have to remember the truth, right? Or that's a bad way to say that.
You don't have to remember.
You don't have to remember what story you told people if you just tell the truth.
That's right.
And
if you have to lie for people to like you, you probably don't want to be in that group of friends or in that circle of people anyways.
That's kind of where I was going to go with that too, is consider who your circle is at that point. And if they're only valuing you because you were a quarterback in college, or because they think you were a quarterback in college, then they're probably not seeing the whole person.
That's right,
so to speak.
They're probably not worth your time anyways.
Right. We already talked about kind of number 9 there, the person who sees the worst in every situation, that Debbie Downer, like, womp womp. Come on, man. Like, I was walking out of the break room the other day, and I know this guy at work is he's going through a hard time right now. Divorced. He's going through some issues with his kids. They're starting to get into the kind of the teenage years and starting to form some of their own opinions. And those opinions are largely weighted by what the spouse is telling this person, or the former spouse is telling this person. And, we know guys, we all know guys who are in situations like that, the messaging that you're getting from both sides over there. And I really admire the people. I really admire the guys that I know. And I know a few of them who are bigger people than to engage
It's
in
really
that.
hard to do.
It is, but I admire those people, and a couple of them listen to the podcast, and a couple of them don't. But you know who I'm talking about, and or those of you who are listening, you know that I'm talking about you, and I admire you for not getting caught up in that. Be the person that you are. Stand your ground. Don't back down. Don't
Yeah,
let
set
lies be
boundaries.
spread about you.
Yep.
But also don't engage. And,
Yeah.
and I appreciate those people for doing that. But I'm in the break room with this guy the other day, and he walks in, and I say, "Hey, man, how's it going?" Try to be a little bit chipper. I know he's sort of down. And he just looks at me and goes, well, you know. And I stopped, and I kind of pointed towards the window in the break room. And I said, "Hey, dude, the sun's shining. It's a nice day out. We just had like 5 days of rain here in Phoenix, which is unheard of.
Never.
We get spoiled by the sun, and I was like, "Hey, the sun's up. It's a nice day, man." So being that glass half full kind of guy to a person who's having a shitty day might be the turning point for him. It might be the pivot point for him or her that brings them out of a funk or whatever. And it doesn't cost anything, to be a generally happy, grateful kind of dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And if you have a relationship with somebody too, I think sometimes just being available and you don't have to probe, but asking questions at appropriate times, checking in at appropriate times, letting them know that you're available and that you care. That's important. Those are important things to do to build strong relationships. And that can be tricky to do too, because sometimes we just get busy and we forget. But, like with the friends that we've lost, those are things that I think both you and I think about. Could I have reached out one more time? Should I have reached out one more time? Should I have been a little more frequent in those things? But I mean, I think there's a tough balance there, but I think it's important to. I agree with what you're saying, and just reaching out and making sure that you let people know that you're available if you're interested in doing that for people, right?
Yeah. This
just
project that I'm working on. Yeah. This project that I'm working on, man, I've spent a lot of hours here at my computer going back through old pictures and reading all my old journals and all my old little green books, my notebooks and stuff, and having conversations with people that I haven't talked to in years. And some of those memories of those individuals have surfaced, and we've talked about them. In fact, it just happened this week. I was having a conversation with a guy over on the East Coast that I've known for a long time, and we were talking about personalities and the difference in. There's a difference in a person who, in a career, is chasing accolades and climbing and focused on climbing a ladder versus a person who's focused on being authentic, and just, hey man, this is me, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm not going to change that just to fit some kind of mold that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Or maybe that you're chasing. And those, I think, are two individuals, two different people. But in that conversation, we were talking about one of these people that we lost last year. And for me, man, that it's dug up a lot of memories of those people, and that's sad, because every time that happens to me, I remember that person, and I remember our interactions. I remember the parties. I remember the, going into briefs and debriefs with that guy, and how jovial and happy he was. And I remember those good times, and I don't really remember the bad stuff anymore, but it makes me miss them. It makes me miss that person.
Same.
And and it's hard when I start reflecting on those times, and that's what gets me thinking about what you just said about how, man, could I have done something different?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what I come back to in situations like that is, I think it's important, if you care about people, just to make yourself available, check in. But at the end of the day, we're all responsible for our own actions. And if somebody doesn't want help, there's probably not much that we could have done for them in those situations anyway. But like you were talking about, I wonder sometimes if the shame that was there for them around what was going on for them. That fear of being seen as different than the memories that you had, right? Like you and I both remember those people being these big, vibrant, full of life personalities
full
in the squad, right? And and you know, at least the kind of friend that I want to be is, you know, I would never judge somebody that I'm close to for having a problem with alcoholism or an addiction to, you know, something like that, you know, or struggling with something. I wouldn't view them differently. You know, I want to see them as that full life version of themselves. And I'd rather help them through something, or, you know, be there for them as much as I could, or support them through something as much as I could to get them back to that version of themselves, than have them be so worried about the judgment that they may receive or the shame that they feel, because maybe, like we were talking about before, they've hidden something. You know, they haven't been honest about what's really going on. You know, they've tried to hide these different things that are happening in their lives from everybody so that they can project this false image of themselves, or what they think they need to project to the world, when the reality is that they're awesome fucking people. And, you know, they deserve to be loved, and they deserve to be, to have friendship just because of the people that they are. We all have our baggage. We all have our issues, and they deserve to be supported through whatever the rough patches that they're going through. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the shitty part now, you know, where we sit now is we kind of have this coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know if there was shame wrapped around that. We don't know the answers to those questions that we have, because we didn't ask. We weren't engaged, or I'm not going to say for you, but I wasn't engaged enough to know those things about that individual. And maybe they just needed somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they just needed to go hang out for a little bit, you know. Maybe they haven't been out of their house in a week and they just needed somebody to go for a long drive with them or something, you know, get some shit off their chest. And that's the kind of, and, you know, one of the things that I don't know if we talk about this enough on the podcast is, I don't want to live a life of regret. Like, I don't like the feeling of sitting around and having a bunch of regrets. I like to try to view things as opportunities to learn versus regret. Now, there are some things maybe that I would change if I could go back and do it all again with the knowledge that I have now. I'm not saying that,
That's
but
normal.
Rather than dwelling on the regret of a situation that maybe got out of hand or wasn't handled properly, I would like to take the lessons learned from that. And should that situation arise again, maybe I can apply some of those lessons learned and maybe not make the same mistakes. That's I think, just and kind of wrapping it back to this person, this negative Nancy, I think that's a little bit more of a positive spin than just, you know, kind of wallowing in your own self-pity about what happened in that situation. Well, fuck that noise, man. Let's take a positive spin. Let's jot down some lessons learned in your journal and just keep that in mind the next time that Cass is having a bad day. You go, hey, wait a minute, I remember this. Let me just reach out to him. Maybe we go out to lunch and just see how pissed off he is about Elon, and you know, maybe he doesn't cry himself to sleep at night.
Yeah.
So
I like to cry. It's okay. Just joking.
I won't judge you. Maybe I will. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you, brother. That's good.
Yeah. Good shit. Good one to end on?
No regrets.
No regrets.
No regrets.
No regrets. Hashtag no regrets.
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right, dude. Well, that turned out to be a fun one. I like these little lists because it always sparks really good. It's fun to tie them together, you know.
I like them
things
too, because
the kind of the themes of the show. It's fun to tie them together with that.
It is. It's that big old knot, right? And invariably, we end up going down other roads with them too, right? Like because they kind of circle back to some of the bigger themes that we talk about the importance of on the podcast and why they're important. So they give us an opportunity to kind of illuminate that, which is good.
Yeah, that's good shit, man.
All right, brother.
Be the one.
Be the change.
Thanks for flying with the Be One Change One podcast. If you got something out of this show, then be the one and share it in your circles of influence.
You can be our wingman through our website at www.be1change1.com. That's be and the number one, change and the number one.com.
We invite you to be the one and join our fighter squadron on social media at Be One Change One on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can follow us at Paul Roscoe White on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as Roscoe's website, www.paulroscoewhite.com.
You can email us from the website, and please leave comments, share, and ask questions, or leave ideas of things you would like to discuss on future podcasts. Most importantly, be the one that helps us win the algorithm by leaving a review on whatever platform you're listening on.
Thanks for joining. Until next time, be the one.